The smell of turkey filled Mom's dining room, but I barely noticed. I sat at the far end of the table, watching my family laugh and share stories. Everyone looked happy except me. When the food came around, I got the smallest portions. Mom made sure of that. "We don't help freeloaders in this family," Mom said loudly, making sure everyone heard. Her voice cut through the warm air like a knife. "You chose to be broke, Jacqueline. That's on you." My brother Tyler snorted with laughter. My sister Amanda rolled her eyes and shook her head. Even my cousins at the other end of the table were giggling. The shame burned in my chest like fire. I wanted to disappear into the floor. Dad just nodded along with everything Mom said. He didn't even look at me. The mashed potatoes on my plate looked as cold as the stares I was getting. Everyone else had full plates piled high with food. Mine looked like scraps you'd give to a dog. I took small bites and tried to ignore the comments. But each laugh felt like a punch to my gut. This was supposed to be family dinner. This was supposed to be Thanksgiving. Instead, it felt like the worst day of my life. After dinner, Dad pulled me into the hallway. The house was still full of voices and laughter, but his face was stone cold. He crossed his arms and looked down at me like I was nothing. "Listen carefully," he said in a low voice. "You're on your own from now on. Don't call us. Don't come by. And definitely don't ask us for a dime." The hallway went completely quiet. Even the voices from the dining room seemed to fade away. My heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Dad's words hit me like a slap across the face. "But Dad, I'm your daughter. You're 25 years old," he cut me off. "Time to grow up and figure it out yourself. We're done supporting you." Tyler appeared in the doorway behind Dad. He had this smug smile on his face like he'd been waiting for this moment his whole life. Amanda peeked around the corner too. Both of them were nodding like this was the best idea ever. I opened my mouth to say something, but no words came out. What could I say? They'd already made up their minds. The family I thought I could count on had just thrown me away like yesterday's garbage. The worst part? They looked relieved to be done with me. 3 days later, my phone rang. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. For a second, I thought maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe she felt bad about what happened at dinner. I was so wrong. "Hey, loser," she said without even saying hello. "Mom wanted me to call and tell you something important." I held my breath, hoping for good news. "We're removing you from the family group chat. You're embarrassing all of us, and we can't have that. Don't come around anymore until you've actually made something of yourself." My stomach dropped to the floor. The family group chat was where we shared everything. Birthday plans, holiday photos, random jokes throughout the week. It was how I stayed connected to everyone. And now they were kicking me out of that too. "Amanda, please don't do this," I begged. "I'm still family." "Family doesn't act like you do," she shot back. "Family doesn't live in tiny apartments and work dead-end jobs. You're 25 and you have nothing to show for it. It's pathetic." The line went dead. I stared at my phone for 10 minutes, waiting for it to ring again. Waiting for someone to say this was all a joke. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. They were really done with me. I sat on my couch that night, counting the coins I'd found in my car and between the cushions. Quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies. I needed grocery money, and this was all I had left until my next paycheck. The apartment felt smaller than usual. The walls seemed to press in on me from all sides. Everything looked cheap and worn out. The furniture I'd bought from garage sales. The TV I'd gotten from a pawn shop. Even my clothes felt shabby. Maybe they were right about me. Maybe I really was nothing. I counted the coins 3 times. $14.37. That was enough for ramen noodles and maybe some bread. If I was careful, it could last until Friday when I got paid. The silence in the apartment was deafening. No family group chat notifications. No calls from Mom asking how my day went. No texts from Tyler about weekend plans. For the first time in my life, I was completely alone. I leaned back on the couch and closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to call them and apologize for being such a disappointment. Part of me wanted to beg them to take me back. But another part of me, a small but growing part, was starting to get angry. Maybe they were wrong about me. Maybe I was worth more than they thought. While cleaning my desk drawer the next morning, my hand hit something thick and flat. I pulled out a manila envelope I'd forgotten about. My name was written across the front in Grandpa William's shaky handwriting. He'd given this to me 2 years ago, right before he died. I remembered that day clearly. He was lying in his hospital bed, looking so small and fragile. He grabbed my hand with surprising strength and pressed this envelope into it. "Don't open this until you're ready," he'd whispered, his eyes serious and intense. "You'll know when the time comes." I'd asked him what he meant, but he just smiled and squeezed my hand tighter. "Promise me you'll wait until you're ready." I'd promised, even though I didn't understand what he was talking about. After the funeral, I'd thrown the envelope in my desk drawer and forgotten about it. There had been so much grief and chaos that week. Now, holding it in my hands, something felt different. The envelope was heavier than I remembered. My name across the front looked like it had been written with extra care. Grandpa had always been the one person in the family who believed in me, even when everyone else thought I was wasting my life. Maybe this was the right time. Maybe I was finally ready for whatever was inside. I tore open the seal with trembling fingers. Inside was a thick stack of legal papers and a handwritten letter. The letter was folded neatly on top. I opened it carefully, afraid it might fall apart. "My dear Jacqueline," it began. "If you're reading this, then you needed to find your strength. I always knew this day would come. Your family sees you as weak, but I see something different. I see potential." My eyes filled with tears as I kept reading. "I've left you something that nobody else knows about. Not your parents. Not your siblings. Only you and me. There's an old warehouse on Maple Street that belongs to you now. The deed is in this envelope. It's been in your name since the day you turned 18. I stopped reading and flipped through the papers. There it was. A property deed with my name on it. The address was 1847 Maple Street. I'd driven past that building 100 times and never paid attention to it. "This building has been my secret," the letter continued. "It's been rented out for years, making money quietly. Nobody in the family knows because they never needed to know. But you, Jacqueline, you're different. You have the heart to handle this responsibility." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the papers. Grandpa had left me property? Why hadn't anyone mentioned this? Why had he kept it secret? I drove to Maple Street the next morning, my heart pounding the entire way. The warehouse looked old and forgotten from the outside. Paint was peeling off the walls, and weeds grew through cracks in the parking lot. I almost turned around and drove home. But then I saw a small sign by the side door, "Building Management Office." I took a deep breath and knocked. A middle-aged man answered. He had kind eyes and a warm smile. "Can I help you?" "I'm Jacqueline," I said nervously. I think I might own this building." His face lit up immediately. "Jacqueline, we've been waiting to meet you. I'm Paul, the building manager. Your grandfather spoke about you all the time." He led me inside to a small office I never knew existed. The walls were covered with rental agreements, maintenance schedules, and financial records. Paul pulled out a thick folder and set it on the desk. "This building has been quietly rented for the past 7 years, he explained. "Your grandfather was very smart about this. 3 different businesses rent space here. They've all been paying on time, every month." I stared at the papers he showed me. Rent payments, maintenance records, profit statements. The numbers were bigger than I expected. Much bigger. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked, afraid to hear the answer. Paul smiled. "About $12,000 a month after expenses." Paul handed me another folder. "There's more," he said gently. "Your grandfather owned 3 properties, not just this one. All in your name." I felt dizzy. 3 properties? My knees almost gave out, and I had to sit down hard in the chair. Paul poured me a glass of water and waited while I caught my breath. "The second property is an apartment building on Oak Avenue. For units, all rented. The third is a small office building downtown. Both have been making steady income for years." He showed me more papers, more numbers, more proof that my life had just completely changed. The total monthly income from all 3 properties was over $20,000. More money than my parents made at their jobs. More money than Tyler made at his fancy marketing company. More money than Amanda made as a nurse. Your grandfather set up a special bank account for all this income, Paul continued. He wanted the money to build up until you were ready. There's been over $300,000 sitting in that account, waiting for you. I stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. $300,000? I'd been counting coins for grocery money while I had more money sitting in a bank than most people see in their entire lives. Why didn't anyone tell me? I whispered. Because your grandfather knew your family wouldn't understand. He wanted you to be ready first. I spent the whole drive home thinking about what to do next. Part of me wanted to call Mom and Dad right away. I wanted to show them the papers and watch their faces change. I wanted to see the shock in Tyler's eyes and the embarrassment on Amanda's face. But something held me back. Maybe it was the hurt from Thanksgiving dinner. Maybe it was the memory of being removed from the family group chat. Or maybe it was just curiosity about what would happen if I waited. I decided to test them first. I wanted to see who they really were when they thought I had nothing. Would they still treat me like garbage? Would they still act like I was an embarrassment to the family? The next few weeks would tell me everything I needed to know about the people who called themselves my family. I kept working at my regular job like nothing had changed. I kept living in my small apartment. I kept driving my old car. But inside, everything was different. I wasn't the broke loser they thought I was. I was actually wealthier than all of them combined. The secret felt powerful and dangerous at the same time. Every time my phone didn't ring, every day that passed without contact from my family, I felt more sure about my decision to wait. They had shown me their true colors. Now it was time to see just how far they would go. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe for more incredible true stories like this one. 2 months later, a wedding invitation arrived in the mail. My cousin Brian was getting married, and the whole family was invited. Everyone except me. I found out through social media. Amanda had posted a photo of her invitation with the caption, "Can't wait for Brian's wedding. Only real successes belong at this kind of celebration." The photo showed a beautiful invitation with gold lettering and fancy paper. Everyone's name was listed: Mom, Dad, Tyler, Amanda, even distant cousins I barely knew. But my name was nowhere to be found. I sat staring at Amanda's post for a long time. The comments from other family members were even worse. Tyler had written, "Good thing certain people won't be there to embarrass us." Mom had added a laughing emoji to his comment. They were celebrating the fact that I wasn't invited. They were happy to exclude me from a family wedding because they thought I wasn't successful enough to be seen in public with them. The hurt was still there, but it was mixed with something else now. Anger. Pure, burning anger. They had no idea what I actually owned. They had no idea that I could probably buy and sell most of the people at that wedding. But they would find out eventually. And when they did, it would be too late for apologies. The next week, I was at the property management office signing some paperwork when a man in an expensive suit approached me. He looked nervous and excited at the same time. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you Jacqueline, the new owner of the airline block?" I looked at Paul, confused. He nodded encouragingly. "That's what we call the area where your properties are located," Paul explained. The man stuck out his hand. "I'm James Harrison from Harrison Development. We've been trying to reach the owner of these properties for months. We want to expand our business district, and your buildings are perfect for what we need." My heart started racing. "What kind of expansion?" "We want to lease your warehouse for our new distribution center. Long-term contract, 20-year commitment. We're prepared to offer triple the current rent." I tried to keep my face calm, but inside I was screaming. Triple the rent? That would mean over $30,000 a month just from the warehouse. Add that to the income from the other 2 properties, and I'd be making more in 1 month than Tyler made in half a year. "I'll need to think about it," I said, trying to sound professional. James handed me his business card. "Of course. But don't think too long. This opportunity won't wait forever." A week later, the first check arrived. Paul had helped me set up direct deposit for all the rental income, but I'd asked for this first payment to be a physical check. I wanted to hold it in my hands and see the numbers written out. $23,450. Made out to Jacqueline Parker. For 1 month's rent from all 3 properties. I sat in my car outside the bank, staring at the check. This was more money than I'd made in 4 months at my regular job. And this would happen every single month automatically, whether I worked or not. My hands were shaking as I walked into the bank. The teller looked at the check twice before calling over her supervisor. They asked for extra identification and made several phone calls to verify everything was legitimate. "This is a very large deposit," the supervisor said politely. "We just want to make sure everything is in order." When they finally processed it, my account balance jumped from $230 to over $23,000. I took a screenshot of the balance and stared at it for 10 minutes. 6 months ago, my family had called me broke. They'd laughed at me for being poor. They'd cut me off for asking for help with groceries. If only they knew. My phone rang on a Tuesday morning while I was getting ready for work. Mom's name appeared on the screen. For a second, I thought about not answering. But curiosity got the better of me. "Hi, honey," she said in her sweetest voice. The same voice she used when she wanted something. "How are you doing?" "I'm fine, Mom." I kept my voice neutral. "Listen, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I was hoping you could help your brother out. Tyler's having some trouble with his mortgage payments. The bank is threatening to foreclose." I almost laughed out loud. Tyler, who had made fun of me for being broke, was now broke himself. Tyler, who had nodded along when Dad cut me off, now needed money. "He just needs someone to co-sign a small loan," Mom continued. "Nothing major. Maybe you have some savings you could use to help?" Family helps family, right? The irony was incredible. Family helps family? Where was that attitude at Thanksgiving dinner? Where was that philosophy when they removed me from the group chat? "Sorry, Mom," I said calmly. "I can't help right now." The silence on the phone told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't called because she missed me. She hadn't called because she felt bad about how they'd treated me. She'd called because they needed money, and I was their last option. "What do you mean you can't help?" Mom's voice had changed from sweet to sharp. "He's your brother." "You're right," I said. "He's my brother. The same brother who laughed when you gave me table scraps at Thanksgiving. The same brother who agreed when Dad cut me off completely. That was different." "No, Mom. It wasn't different. You all decided I was worthless when you thought I had no money. Now Tyler needs money, and suddenly I'm family again." I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end of the line. She wasn't used to me standing up to her like this. "We were trying to teach you responsibility," she said, but her voice sounded weak. "By humiliating me in front of the entire family? By cutting me out of your lives completely? That was teaching me responsibility." Another long silence. "Things are hard right now, Jacqueline. Tyler could lose his house. Your father's business isn't doing well either. We need to stick together as a family." I wanted to ask her why sticking together as a family didn't matter when I was the one struggling. But I kept my voice calm and even. "I'm sorry Tyler's having problems. But like Dad told me, it's time for him to figure it out himself." I hung up before she could say anything else. The next Sunday, I decided to go to church for the first time in months. I sat in the back pew, trying to stay invisible. But after the service, I overheard Mom talking to a group of her friends near the front. "It's so sad what's happened to Jacqueline," she was saying in her fake concerned voice. "She's become so selfish and bitter. We tried to help her, but she just won't listen." Mrs. Henderson, who had known me since I was a kid, shook her head sympathetically. "Some children just turn out lazy," she said. "No matter how hard you try as a parent." "Exactly," Mom continued. "She's 25 and has nothing to show for it. Lives in a tiny apartment, works a dead-end job. It's embarrassing for the whole family." Tyler, who was standing nearby, nodded sadly. "We've tried everything. But you can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves." The words stung, but they also made me more determined. They were telling people I was lazy and pathetic while they were secretly begging me for money. They were spreading lies about me while their own lives were falling apart. I slipped out the back door before anyone saw me. But their words followed me home. Every lie they told just made my eventual reveal feel more justified. That afternoon, I drove to the car dealership downtown. I'd been thinking about buying a new car for weeks, but I wanted to be smart about it. Nothing too flashy. Nothing that would give away my secret too early. I settled on a clean, reliable sedan. Nothing fancy, but new and dependable. When the salesman asked about financing, $28,000. I wrote the check without hesitation. The salesman kept looking at the check and then at me, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. We don't get many cash buyers, he admitted. Especially not customers your age. I drove the new car straight to a private garage I'd rented across town. Nobody in my family would see it there. I wanted to keep it hidden until the right moment came. Walking back to my old car, which I'd parked a few blocks away, I felt incredible. I owned 3 properties, had hundreds of thousands in the bank, and could buy a new car with cash. But to my family, I was still just the broke loser who lived in a tiny apartment. The secret felt more powerful every day. 3 weeks later, the news broke. Dad's construction business was in serious trouble. Tyler called me, crying actual tears over the phone. Jacqueline, I know things have been weird between us, but this is an emergency. Dad might lose everything. The business, the house, all of it. I sat in my apartment, listening to my brother sob. Part of me felt bad for him, but a bigger part of me remembered Thanksgiving dinner. I remembered being called a freeloader. I remembered the laughter when I was given scraps of food. What happened? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. A big project fell through. The client isn't paying what they owe. Dad borrowed money to cover materials and labor, but now he can't pay it back. The bank is calling in all his loans. Tyler's voice was shaky and desperate. This was the same person who had smirked when Dad cut me off. The same person who had agreed that I was an embarrassment to the family. They could lose the house, Jacqueline. Mom and Dad could be homeless. Please, you have to talk to Dad. Maybe you can help convince him to file for bankruptcy or something. I almost laughed. They wanted me to help Dad figure out his financial problems? The same man who told me I was on my own? The same man who said not to ask them for a dime? I don't know anything about business, Tyler. But your family, he pleaded. Please. 2 days later, Dad called me himself. I'd been expecting it, but hearing his voice still surprised me. He sounded older, more tired than I remembered. Sweetheart, he said quietly. I know we haven't been talking, but I need to swallow my pride here. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. I waited for him to continue. The business is failing. We might lose the house. Your mother is scared, and I don't know what to do. I was hoping, maybe you could help us figure something out. The man who had cut me off completely was now asking for my help. The man who had told me I was on my own was now admitting he needed me. What kind of help? I asked. I don't know. Maybe you have some savings we could borrow? Or maybe you know someone who could co-sign a loan. I know it's a lot to ask after everything. His voice cracked on the last word. This was the closest thing to an apology I was going to get. We're family, he continued. I know I said some things I shouldn't have. But we're still family, right? I thought about hanging up. I thought about telling him exactly what he'd told me, that he was on his own. But instead, I heard myself saying something different. Let me think about it, Dad. Maybe we could meet up and talk. The relief in his voice was obvious. Really? You do that. I'll call you back tomorrow. I arranged to meet them at a small restaurant across town. I drove my old car and wore my regular clothes. To them, I still looked like the same broke daughter they'd rejected months ago. Walking into the restaurant, I saw them sitting at a corner table. Mom looked smaller than usual. Dad's face was gray with worry. Tyler was there too, fidgeting with his phone. They all stood up when I approached, like they weren't sure how to greet me. Mom reached out for a hug, but then stopped herself halfway. Thank you for coming, Dad said quietly. I know things have been difficult between us. We sat down, and an awkward silence filled the space between us. They kept glancing at each other, unsure how to start. So tell me what's going on, I said finally. Dad explained the situation in detail. Bad investments, unpaid invoices, mounting debt. They were looking at losing everything within the next 60 days. We've explored every option, Mom said. Bankruptcy, selling assets, taking out second mortgages. Nothing works. They looked desperate and defeated. These were the same people who had called me a freeloader just a few months ago. Now they were the ones with no options left. There is one possibility, Dad said hesitantly. The bank might extend our credit if we had a cosigner. Someone with good credit and maybe some assets to back it up. Tyler leaned forward eagerly. It's just paperwork, really. You wouldn't actually need to put up any money. Just your signature and maybe proof that you have some savings. I almost choked on my water. They wanted me to co-sign their debt? The same people who had humiliated me for being poor now wanted to use my credit to save themselves? How much money are we talking about? I asked. About $150,000, Dad admitted. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's just a guarantee. You wouldn't actually have to pay it. Mom reached across the table and touched my hand. Please, honey. We know we haven't been the best family to you lately, but we're desperate. You're our only hope. The irony was overwhelming. I had over $300,000 sitting in my account, but they thought they were asking me to risk money I didn't have. They thought they were asking for a huge favor from their broke daughter. Let me see what I can do, I said slowly. But I'll need to show you exactly what my financial situation looks like first. They all nodded eagerly, thinking I was going to prove I was too broke to help them. They had no idea what was coming. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I'd prepared. 3 property deeds, bank statements, and rental agreements. I placed them on the table calmly, like I was ordering coffee. Before we talk about co-signing anything, I said quietly, I think you should know something about my financial situation. Dad picked up the first deed and started reading. His eyes widened almost immediately. This is a property deed. With your name on it. That's right, I said. Grandpa William left me 3 properties when he died. They've been generating rental income for years. Mom grabbed the bank statements and stared at the numbers. Her face went completely white. This can't be real, she whispered. This says you have over $300,000. Tyler snatched the papers from her hands. That's impossible. You're broke. You live in a tiny apartment. You drive that old car. I looked each of them in the eye, one by one. I own 3 rental properties that bring in over $20,000 a month. I have more money in the bank than all of you combined. I've been financially stable this entire time. The restaurant felt dead silent, even though other customers were talking around us. My family just stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. The silence stretched on forever. Dad's hands were shaking as he flipped through the property deeds. Mom just stared at me like she was seeing a ghost. Tyler kept looking at the bank statements and then back at me. How long have you had this? Dad finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Since the day you cut me off, I replied. Since the day you told me I was on my own. Since the day you called me a freeloader at Thanksgiving dinner. Mom's face crumpled. But why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think? Let you think what? That I was broke? That I was a failure? My voice stayed calm, but the anger was building inside me. You didn't think those things because I was actually broke. You thought them because you wanted to think them. Tyler was still staring at the papers. This doesn't make sense. If you had this money, why were you living like that? Why were you working that job? Because Grandpa William taught me something you never learned. Money doesn't make you better than other people. Having wealth doesn't give you the right to look down on others. Dad set the papers down carefully. Sweetheart, if we had known. If you had known what? You would have treated me with respect? You would have included me in family events? You would have acted like I mattered. The questions hung in the air between us. They couldn't answer because we all knew the truth. How long have you known? Mom asked again, tears starting to form in her eyes. I found out the day after you removed me from the family group chat, I said. I found out when I was sitting in my apartment counting coins for grocery money. While you were all telling people at church how lazy and pathetic I was. Tyler put his head in his hands. Oh God, Jacqueline. We had no idea. No, you had every opportunity to treat me with basic human dignity, whether I had money or not. You chose not to. Dad was staring at the table, unable to look at me. I told you that you were on your own. I told you not to ask us for a dime. And now here you are, asking me for help. Asking me to risk my credit and my assets to save you from bankruptcy. The weight of their hypocrisy was crushing them. I could see it in their faces. They had rejected their own daughter for being poor, and now they needed that same daughter to save them from being poor themselves. We made a mistake, Mom said softly. We made a terrible mistake. Yes, you did. You showed me exactly who you were when you thought I had nothing. You proved that your love was conditional on my financial status. I started gathering the papers and putting them back in the folder. They watched every movement like they were afraid I was going to disappear forever. Dad finally looked up at me. "What happens now?" he asked. I stood up slowly, folder in hand. The whole restaurant seemed to be watching us, though I knew that was just my imagination. "Now you know the truth," I said. "You called me broke when I was actually wealthier than all of you. You cut me off when I was the one who could have helped you all along. You treated me like garbage when I was the only one in the family with real financial security." Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. "Jacqueline, please. We're still family. We're still your parents." "Family?" I looked at each of them one more time. "You want to talk about family? Family doesn't humiliate each other at holiday dinners. Family doesn't cut each other off for asking for help. Family doesn't spread lies about each other at church." Tyler was crying now. "We can fix this. We can make it right. Can you? Can you take back Thanksgiving dinner? Can you take back removing me from the group chat? Can you take back all the things you said about me to your friends?" They couldn't answer because they knew they couldn't undo any of it. They couldn't take back the months of humiliation and rejection. They couldn't erase the way they'd made me feel worthless. "You called me broke," I continued. "You cut me out of your lives. And now, when you're the ones facing bankruptcy, you come crawling back asking for help." I looked at each of them one last time. Mom with tears streaming down her face. Dad staring at his hands in shame. Tyler still holding the bank statements like he couldn't believe they were real. "Here's what's going to happen," I said calmly. "I'm going to walk out of this restaurant. I'm going to go back to my life, my properties, and my financial security. And you're going to figure out your problems on your own." "Jacqueline, please," Mom started. "Just like you told me to do. Just like Dad said when he cut me off. You're all adults. Time to grow up and figure it out yourselves." I adjusted my jacket and picked up my keys. "But we're family," Dad said desperately. "No," I replied. "Family doesn't abandon each other when times get tough. Family doesn't treat each other like I was treated. You had your chance to be my family, and you chose to reject me instead." I started walking toward the exit, then stopped and turned back one more time. "You know what the funny thing is? If you had just treated me with basic respect and kindness, I would have helped you through any financial problem you had. But you showed me your true character. You proved that your love was based on what you thought I could do for you." The restaurant door felt heavy as I pushed it open. The afternoon sun was bright and warm on my face. Behind me, I could hear Mom crying and Dad calling my name, but I didn't turn around. For the first time in my entire life, I was truly free from their judgment and expectations. I had my own wealth, my own properties, and my own future. Most importantly, I had my self-respect back. If this story moved you and you want to see more incredible true stories like this one, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Share this story with anyone who's ever felt underestimated by their own family. Sometimes the people who doubt you the most are the ones who end up needing you the most. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below.